Good evening. Tonight, we embark on a journey through the fog of centuries and across continental borders to trace one of the most resilient, mutable, and powerful figures in the human imagination, the vampire. This will not be a mere retelling of myths or film plots. It is an attempt to understand why this particular image holds such hypnotic power, how it reflects our deepest collective fears and desires, and how it managed to transform from a repulsive corpse into a symbol of eternal, albeit cursed, beauty. Our path will be long. We will start at the source, with genuine folklore, where the vampire was not a romantic hero, but a social catastrophe. Then we will analyze the hunter's toolkit, from garlic to the cross, to understand the logic of magical thinking. Next, we will trace the literary and cinematic evolution of the image, but we will not stop there. We will delve into psychology. What does our fascination with vampires say about us? We will examine them as political and social metaphors. And finally, we will cast a glance into the future. Where is this archetype heading in the 21st century, in the era of genetic engineering, digital immortality, and new social anxieties? Part 1. The Real Legends. Hungry Shadows from Around the World. The Pathological Anatomy of Fear. When we hear the word vampire, our mind conveniently conjures an image created by Bram Stoker and Hollywood. But to understand the essence of the phenomenon, we must look where there are no capes or Gothic castles, in villages ravaged by plague, in homes where children die one after another. The belief in reanimated, blood-drinking corpses is not a fiction, but a complex explanation for inexplicable tragedies. Europe, the ghoul, the plague, and social schism. The Slavic upir, or vampire, is a classic example of a social vampire. It was created not by magic, but by a combination of cultural and natural factors. Epidemiology. The most massive vampire panics in Serbia, Hungary, and Greece in the 18th century coincided with outbreaks of plague, anthrax, and tuberculosis. Disease decimated entire families. The mechanism of infection was invisible. The logic was simple. The first to die, the patient 0, rises from the grave and continues to kill his relatives. The symptoms of consumption, pallor, weakness, bloody cough, perfectly fit the picture of being drained by a victim. Thanatopraxy, the science of decomposition. Modern forensic pathologists offer a simple explanation for the signs of vampirism. A corpse, especially one buried shallowly, decomposes. Gases bloat the abdomen, forcing blood out of the mouth and nose, creating the impression it has been feasting. The skin retracts, exposing teeth and nails, which, due to tissue desiccation, may appear to have grown. The corpse may groan or move due to escaping gases. For a person exhuming a body a few weeks after burial, these were irrefutable proof of undeath. Social control. Signs of a potential vampire were often markers of otherness. A suicide, someone excommunicated from the church, a foreigner, a person with a physical deformity, extra digits, red hair, a quarrelsome neighbor, a sorcerer. Vampirism became a legitimate way to posthumously punish a violator of social norms and cleanse the community of filth. The ritual of staking was not just a killing, but an act of collective therapy. The Far East, spirits, and qi. In Asia, the concept of vampirism is often less material and more spiritual. Chinese jiangshi, stiff corpse or hopping vampire. This is not an intellectual vampire, but more of a zombie, driven by residual qi. It hops with outstretched arms because pallbearers carried coffins on poles, and the spirit might remember this bouncing motion. It drains not so much blood as life force, yang, leaving the victim lethargic and ill. Its appearance is a direct consequence of violated burial rites, improper feng shui, and unavenged death, that is, a disruption in cosmic order. Indian Vetala, a creature from the collection Baital Pachisi, a wise, malevolent spirit that inhabits a corpse. It is not limited to drinking blood, It amuses itself by manipulating the living, posing riddles, making deals. This is a vampire trickster, the embodiment of dangerous knowledge and the unpredictability of the otherworldly. Filipino manananggal, Malay pananggalan. A stunning example of partial vampirism. Most often, it is a female sorceress whose upper body, with head and entrails, can detach at night to hunt. Its target is not just blood, but the life force of pregnant women and infants. This is a clear projection of fear toward maternal aggression, childbirth complications, and infant mortality. The defense? Find its lower half and sprinkle it with salt so the parts cannot reunite at dawn. This is a neutralization ritual based on the symbolism of wholeness, Africa and the New World, sorcerers and energy parasites. Here, vampirism is almost always associated with conscious evil and witchcraft. The Obayifo, assassin spider. In the Caribbean, particularly Jamaica, there are legends of people who can send their shadow, or spiritual double, to suck the life force from enemies. This is vampirism as a weapon in social conflicts. Navajo Yenal Tloshi, skinwalker. A sorcerer who uses the ashes of the dead to create lethal magic. They can vampirize a victim's strength, health, or luck through the power of thought and ritual. Their destruction requires not a stake, but a complex ceremonial cleansing performed by a shaman. Conclusion of Part 1. The global vampire is a diagnosis humanity assigned to a world gripped by disaster. It is a creature born at the intersection of biology, decomposition, disease, sociology, fear of the other, and theology, unclean death. It was necessary to give a name to chaos and to ritually defeat that chaos. Part 2. Why garlic and the cross? The semiotics of protection, from folk magic to sacred order. The vampire's weaknesses are not a random assortment. They are a systematized arsenal of folk and religious wisdom, each part with its own deep logic. Garlic, wild rose, mustard seed. Apotropaic magic, magic of aversion. The principle is simple. Strong odor, sharp taste, thorniness. Properties repulsive to evil spirits, which are associated with decay and death. Garlic, Allium sativum. Its power is threefold. 1. Practical, an antiseptic. In miasma theory, it cleanses the air. 2. Symbolic. Its pungency is associated with fire, sun, life. Its bulb with wholeness and fertility. 3. Mythological. In some Slavic traditions, it grew where God's foot stepped, or where the devil, retreating from the cross, planted it. It marks the boundary between the self, pure, and the other, impure world. Wild rose, dog rose. In Balkan folklore, a vampire was compelled to count every thorn on a branch thrown before it. This is a trap of endless, monotonous action, paralyzing the spirit. Compare scattering poppy seeds or salt. It becomes stuck in a meaningless ritual until dawn. Mustard seed, tiny, countless. Scattering it on a grave condemns the vampire to eternal gathering, distracting it from evil deeds. The cross, holy water, consecrated ground, the power of sanctified order. Here, it is not magic, but theology that works. The vampire is a creature initially existing outside this order. The cross. This is not an amulet. It is a banner, a symbol of victory over death, the very foundation on which the vampire feeds. It does not burn, that is a cinematic hyperbole, but expels. It creates a space where the vampire's curse is invalid, where God's laws, not the devil's, apply. The material matters. A silver cross refers to purity, and the moon, light in the night, a wooden one to the Lord's cross. Consecrated ground. A key concept. The land of a churchyard is God's territory. A vampire, being an unclean corpse, can neither leave it, if buried properly, nor set foot on it, if cast out. Its attachment to a coffin with native soil is a parody of this connection. It carries a piece of cursed, its own land, because no other will accept it. Holy water and prosphora, communion bread, elements of the Eucharist. For a creature excommunicated from the sacraments, they are concentrated grace, acting like alkali on acid. They do not just harm, they deny its very nature. Sun, fire, silver, elemental forces. The sun, the absolute opposite of the vampire, a symbol of life, constancy, divine omniscience. The vampire is a creature of night, secrecy, decay. The sun does not burn it, but dissolves it, disperses the darkness of which it is composed. Fire, the cleansing, transforming element. Burning the corpse guarantees destruction, a transition of matter into another state, leaving nothing to reanimate. Silver, a metal associated with the moon, purity, and nobility. In alchemy, it is close to gold, perfection. Its wounding properties against evil are based on this symbolism of purity violated by contact with filth. Thus, the hunter's arsenal is not a random set, but a thoughtful system, attacking the vampire on all levels. Through folk magic, garlic, religious law, the cross, and elemental forces, fire. Part 3. Evolution. From bloated corpse to pale aristocrat. The cultural biography of an archetype. The evolution of the vampire is a mirror reflecting the changing fears, desires, and cultural traumas of the West. Phase 1. Prehistory and Romanticism. Before 1897. Folklore. The Upir. A collective village threat. Literary breakthrough. Poems by the Romantics. Bürger, Goethe, and, crucially, John Polidori's The Vampire, 1819. Polidori's Lord Ruthven is a fashionable dandy, cold, cynical, seductive. This is the vampire as a metaphor for the corrupt aristocracy, parasitic on society. Here, the connection between vampirism and power, money, and social status is born. Victorian subtext. Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, 1872, makes the subtext explicit. Vampirism becomes the language of forbidden, homoerotic passion. It is a disease emanating from a beautiful, mysterious stranger, blurring the boundaries of personality and morality. Fear of female sexuality and hysteria finds its perfect embodiment here. Phase 2. Canonization and Glamour, 1897 to 1970s. Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1897. A brilliant synthesis. Stoker mixes folklore, history, Vlad the Impaler, geographic exoticism, Transylvania, and contemporary fears. Count Dracula is 1. An inversion of Victorian values, an ancient aristocrat against modern science. Van Helsing, Seward. The East invading imperial London. 2. A sexual threat. His bites for women, Lucy, Mina, are an act of defilement, transforming the virtuous Lucy into an aggressive, lustful, unclean being. 3. An economic metaphor. He accumulates across centuries, buys London real estate. He is a parasitic capitalist in pure form. Cinema. F. W. Murnau's Nosferatu, 1922. The vampire as plague, ugly and unstoppable. Todd Browning's Dracula, 1931, with Bela Lugosi. The canonization of the glamorous, hypnotic, monster aristocrat. Christopher Lee in Hammer films adds physical power and overt sensuality. Phase 3. Humanization and Existential Crisis, 1976 to 1990s. Anne Rice's Revolution, Interview with the Vampire, 1976, changes everything. Her vampires, Louis, Lestat, Armand, are personalities. They reflect, suffer from eternity, seek meaning, agonize over morality and God-forsakenness. Vampirism becomes a metaphor for marginality, homosexuality, otherness, artistic sensibility, eternity as a burden of knowledge. Existential angst, the loss of God, the meaninglessness of endless life.
The culture of the 80s to 90s. The Lost Boys. Vampires as a teenage gang, rebellion, and subculture. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Complex relationships with the vampire angel, whose soul makes him a tragic lover. The vampire finally becomes a subject, not an object. Phase 4. Romanticization, commercialization, and deconstruction. 2000s, present. Stephenie Meyer's Twilight, 2005 to 2008. The apex of de-demonization. Edward Cullen is a vegetarian vampire, a perfect gentleman, an ultra-strong protector. Vampirism is stripped of all danger and sin, becoming a metaphor for abstinence, proper love, and eternal youth for a teenage audience. It is a fantasy of power without responsibility, beauty without decay. Counter-reaction. 30 Days of Night. A return to horror. Vampires as primitive, feral pack hunters. Preacher. The vampire as a degenerate living in the sewers. Deconstruction and satire. Let the right one in. Vampirism as a metaphor for childhood cruelty and social alienation. What We Do in the Shadows, a brilliant comedy about the daily life of contemporary vampires, their problems with rent and interspecies relations. This is a sign of the archetype's maturity. We can laugh at it. New Mythologies. Sergei Lukyanenko's Nightwatch series. Vampires and mages as part of a rationally structured other reality, a system of the twilight and licenses. Vampirism becomes a job, a bureaucracy. Part 4. The Vampire as a Mirror. Psychological, political, and social interpretations. Psychology. The Shadow and the Anima Animus. Jung. The Vampire as the Shadow. It embodies everything we repress, our aggression, lust, fear of death, desire for power over others. Hunting the vampire is a symbolic battle with one's own dark side. The vampire as the anima animus, the soul image of the opposite sex. For a male character, like Jonathan Harker, Dracula is a usurper stealing his wife, Anima. For a female audience, the romantic vampire, Edward, Angel, often represents the archetypal image of the mysterious, powerful, eternal, beloved Animus, tearing her away from the mundane. Politics and society. Metaphors of exploitation. Class struggle. Lord Ruthven and Dracula. The parasitic aristocracy. Modern interpretations can see vampires as corporations draining resources from communities, colonialism and xenophobia. Stoker's Dracula is the barbarian from the East, threatening the British Empire. This is the fear of reverse colonization, of the other penetrating the very heart of the metropolis. Sexuality and gender. From Carmilla, homoeroticism, to modern stories where the bite equals loss of innocence, infection with AIDS, or, conversely, liberation from conventions. The vampire violates all sexual taboos. Capitalism. The vampire is the ideal capitalist. It accumulates wealth over centuries without producing anything. It is a consumer in pure form, turning life itself, blood, into a commodity. Its progeny is almost literal expansion, the creation of a network of dependence. Part 5. The Future of Immortality. The Vampire in the 21st Century and Beyond. Where is the archetype headed? Its adaptability is limitless. 1. The Technological Vampire. In the era of big data and surveillance, the vampire can become a metaphor for corporations stealing our personal data, the blood of the digital age. Cyber vampires feeding on neural or life energy in virtual reality. 2. The Biological Vampire. In the context of genetic engineering and the quest for immortality, the vampire can become a symbol of transhumanism, a creature that has overcome biological limits but paid for it with the loss of humanity. A vampire story can become a story about the price of eternal youth, available only to the super rich. 3. The Ecological Vampire. A creature that drains not blood,
but the planet's life force, its resources, a metaphor for the Anthropocene catastrophe. 4. The post-humanist vampire, a fully deconstructed image, a being that does not fear the sun, the cross, and can be a hero or anti-hero without obligatory tragedy. Its nature is simply a given, like skin color, and the plot revolves around ethical dilemmas, not hunting. Conclusion. The vampire has proven to be the most resilient myth of modernity, because it is the perfect container. Anything can be poured into it. Fear of an epidemic, hatred of the aristocracy, repressed sexual desire, the existential angst of the intellectual, the teenage dream of eternal love, a critique of capitalism or technocracy. It began its journey as an explanation for death from plague. Then it became a warning about the other, about lust, about power. Then it turned into an interlocutor, sharing our doubts and torments. And today, it increasingly becomes a mirror in which we examine our own future, a future where questions of immortality, identity, ethics, and the price of progress confront us as sharply as they once did villagers digging up their neighbor's grave with a stake in hand. It changes because we change. Its immortality is the immortality of our own deepest questions, to which humanity still has no definitive answers. As long as we fear death, crave eternity, experience passion, and feel like strangers in this world, the vampire's shadow will fall on the pages of our books and on our screens, not as a threat from without, but as our own dark, eternally young, eternally thirsty reflection. Thank you for your attention. Time for questions, discussions, and perhaps for your own stories of encounters with this eternal archetype.